Welcome to Clothing Culture, a fashion industry podcast at the intersection of technology and innovation. I'm Emily Lane.
And I'm Bret Schnitker. We speak with experts and disruptors who are moving the industry forward
And discuss solutions to real industry challenges.
Clothing Culture is brought to you by Stars Design Group, a global design and production house with more than 30 years of experience.
Welcome back to another episode of Clothing Culture. In so many of our conversations, we have talked about how we live in a microwave society. People want things fast, they want it now, and there is certainly no exception to that in the garment industry. We have clients contact us every day saying, how quickly can I get this? Even knowing that we're still living through this kind of pandemic, post-pandemic phase where there's more complications than ever to navigate this. However, when looking at the landscape of manufacturing, there are some key considerations that can be made to streamline the process as much as possible. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Bret,
Yeah, I think generally, good morning. I think there are things that we should consider that are in our control today and things that aren't in our control today. Certainly logistics, the whole supply chain logistics issues, all over the news. Hopefully that will go away sometime in 2022. But today it's just a mess. You know, lead times from China to the US traditionally are 11 to 18 days. I mean, it's 60, 75, 90 days with port delays and issues like that. I think a lot of conversations that you've heard on the news, they've said, hey, abandon all hope for fast, turn, things like that. But there are certainly some things to consider when you're going down the path that are in your control about production globally. There are decisions you can make geographically. There are decisions that you can make on a factory level, and I think that's what we're looking to explore and dialogue about today.
You know, as you mentioned, the considerations can vary country by country,
Sure.
But it can also vary, based on the component of manufacturing that we're talking about. Manufacturers aren't all self-contained,
Right.
And there are so many components of the process. Let's just start by kind of going through a quick breakdown of what are all the components that we can really look at exploring for. Efficiencies.
Sure, yeah. I think, there are, I wouldn't say that there's a vast majority that share this ideal, but you've mentioned that, some of the people that are just kind of entering the industry, they sort of feel like, hey, there's a factory out there and I'm going to go to Bob the manufacturer and he's got fabric on rolls and materials and sewing thread in-house and all that matches, and he's just going to pull the fabric off and go make a garment. The ecosystem of manufacturing is certainly more complex, and it can be more complex country by country. Certain considerations have to be made based upon the particular category of manufacturer that you're dealing with. But key major components of this ecosystem, if you will, are, the raw materials supplier, the spinning mill, the weaving or knitting mill, the dyeing mill, and then this CM facility, cut and make facility, the manufacturing facility. And so, as we kind of look through each one of those various components, there are ways to understand that ecosystem, the distance between each one of those facilities, the ability to utilize those facilities more efficiently, that at least can speed up that chain, within certain countries.
Well, let's start kind of at the beginning. Let's start at the raw materials.
Yeah, I think raw materials, certainly there are a number of key raw materials today that people are working with. So poly, nylon, cotton, these type of materials. And so some countries specialize in cotton production. They have their own crops. Therefore, by having their own crops, they have the availability not only to the raw material cotton, but also the varying qualities of that perhaps. So even within cotton, there are qualities, short staple lengths, lesser qualities, longer staple lengths, better qualities. And so, for instance, when I was in Ethiopia, they certainly had their own cotton crop. However, the cotton wasn't really fully formed, that industry wasn't fully formed, so the staple length was very short, therefore the quality would be low, and we had to import all of that from other areas. So, having to import that from another country can certainly expand lead times.
Yeah. So, really what I hear there, it's understanding the qualities and what you want out of your production, and then really making sure that that's available. And if it's not, how long is it going to take to procure that?
Yeah, and as part of your decision-making process for efficiency, understanding which country has that in the availability in a quicker time than others.
So we've got, sourcing our fabric, and then we also have dyeing mills.
Yeah, so after you move through those kind of raw materials, then you're going to go into weaving and knitting. And there is kind of a general vicinity conversation, about weaving and knitting mills, then moving into dyeing mills and or printing mills. Those are generally relatively close together. And today, it's not a commonplace for knitting and woven mills to stock piece goods. They work on pretty tight margins. If something isn't turning and moving quickly in terms of an order placed and manufacturing done and it's shipped out, it can affect profitability for a knitting or weaving mill. However, because of what's going on in our industry, the desire for things to move quicker, certain mills in certain countries are certainly taking stock positions more readily than they were in the past. And so, for instance, if you are making decisions about a various, let's say woven fabric in this case, looking to a mill that might carry a certain quality of woven twill fabric or whatever that you might want can make a difference between that fabric taking 3 to 4 weeks as it works through the chain to having it readily available and going directly to the dyeing mill, which can take 1 week to 2 weeks to dye, again, assuming that you don't have it blocked and they have to fit other customers in. So that particular component of, the manufacturing can have a pretty wide ranging timing. And so really understanding the detail of that aspect can have a pretty profound effect on your lead time.
Every week counts.
Every week counts, yeah,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely. And then you can talk about kind of some of those value-added treatments.
Yeah, so again, I think those are within those general ecosystems where you're talking about printing, depending on the substrate of the fabric, if it's synthetic or poly, are there sublimated or, facilities to be able to do that? If it's cotton-based, do they have reactive or pigment printing? Those things all kind of fall into, that general lead time and understanding if all of those are in a general area, that can make an impact on your lead time.
Let's talk about trim suppliers and that resource checklist.
Yeah, that's kind of a hidden surprise factor when people are talking about lead times. They don't really think consciously about trims. And trims, for our conversation today, for those that might ask the question, are buttons, labels, zippers, snaps, hang tags, sewing thread, fusible, all those type of items. And
that really kind of make it all come together.
They really do.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of the last thing that people think about. But I can certainly tell you one particular category, zippers, has a wide time frame difference on the ability to affect production.
Is that because of demand or is it because of location?
I think many cases it is a component of demand, and it's a focused demand. There are certain zipper companies in our industry, YKK, that there is a significant demand because YKK has created a very high quality zipper. They've patented that process. They have a certain amount of production, and there's a lot of demand that goes into that production. So lead times for YKK, that has been one of the biggest, I think, challenges for zippers in the industry, where YKK can take up to 8 weeks to get zippers. It takes a long time. So the factory of production needs to plan for that lead time in zippers. Today, however,
do factories, I've got to ask though, do factories just ever keep that in stock, or do they do they procure it based on the programs that come in?
Absolutely procure it based on the production that comes in, because you have various lengths, you have colors, finishes, things like that. So that's generally, ordered based upon need once they calculate sizes and quantities, et cetera. However, there are today a number of choices other than YKK that I think present very acceptable, great qualities in the industry. They might not be that particular patented zipper style that YKK has, but YBS, Ideal, Talon, I mean, the list goes on. And I think that they, searching through the entire system of trims and accessories, particularly in this conversation, zippers, can provide a wide degree of timing that can speed up your production.
One of the things that I see a lot with our clients is sampling, and what that can add to the process.
Yeah.
And so can we talk a little bit about, in looking at sampling, ways to kind of expedite that process?
Yeah, I think technology today there's a lot of conversation about technology aids speed in terms of getting through some of those pre-production steps. Certainly 3D design, and not just 3D design from a aesthetic point of view, 3D design from a technical point of view is occurring all the time. You can actually, in a virtual environment, make fit decisions in some of these software applications that exist today. And speeding up that certainly can affect your overall lead time before it gets into some of these production things that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. And then it also has the added benefit of, reducing waste and things of that
for
nature.
Sure.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of made it through our, our samples and protos and all those things, let's talk about assessing an actual factory for the production side of things, taking a look at that, making sure that they're operating with maximum efficiency. What are some things that you would recommend taking a look at?
Yeah. So again, worldwide, I've been to thousands of factories, and I would say,
just thousands.
I would say it's been a lot of years and a lot of factories, but it's surprising, even factories that you would think that have been around a long time, that have some notable things. It comes down to just like a company being run efficiently or not, it comes down to the management and the philosophy that a factory has. It also comes down to sort of where a country sits along that production cycle. Again, relating back to Ethiopia, that was kind of my pioneer days in manufacturing. But, Ethiopia had been moving from an agrarian to an industrial economy. So they didn't measure things in seconds or minutes. They measured them in weeks and months based upon, planting season. So that mentality kind of filtered down to even the production lines. Even though cost was very inexpensive in the country per person for, labor cost, efficiency became a very integral component to consider. If you just look at overall labor costs country by country, it's a very small fraction of that overall conversation about the cost and the efficiency in terms of which a garment is manufactured. China, for instance, moves very quickly in lines and production lines. So even though labor cost might be more expensive on a monthly basis per worker, the efficiency at which they sew, the final result will indicate a cost that might be less expensive than a country where you see a labor cost being very low, but efficiency being also low.
Would you attribute that success in China to the fact that they've been in the industry for so long? Is it technology? What is it that makes them so good at maximizing their human power?
I think it's a combination of factors. Certainly, as you're in the industry a long time, you make a commitment to the industry. Skill set becomes better, and therefore efficiency becomes better. But it's also mindset. I think that as a nation, the mindset for China in all aspects is how do I maximize efficiency and increase and improve productivity? They supply the world. So from a mindset, regardless of sector, they're looking at ways to improve efficiency all the time. And at one point when labor cost was low, and they certainly have a very large labor pool, maximizing human efficiency was critical, because with low cost labor and maximum efficiency, you get some very advantageous costs. As labor rates climb, as their economy has moved really from what we would consider, first level industrialization many years ago to really being second to the United States in terms of an overall economy, they've moved, lifestyle, quality of life, costing, all of that has gone up. So now they're certainly aggressive at adding technology into all of their sewing lines to further improve efficiency. At one point, from our perspective in apparel, they might not be the best choice for a country of manufacture because their labor costs will just get too expensive for apparel. They've moved aggressively into technology and all that stuff where that labor cost can be more efficient.
Yeah. Looking at production a little deeper, I mean, there are things to consider even just with production line layouts.
For sure, absolutely. Certain line systems and how you set up line systems, the distance between even cutting, bundling, and assembly lines can make a significant impact in time. We talk about, all these different metrics that exist, and I think improving metrics, improving efficiency along the process is really important. This thing called SAM, standard allowable minutes, is how our industry in factories allocates what is a good industry time to sew a garment, to manufacture a garment, and watching those SAMs and understanding how those change country by country are an important dynamic in understanding efficiency.
Okay, I was going to ask you. I'm sure there are some formulas out there.
Oh, there's a lot. Yes, tons in factories. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other considerations to look at when you're looking kind of inside the factory line, communication or any other things like that you would go, you've got to make sure and take a look at this before you make your decision?
Yeah, I think that general manufacturing, again, we like to simplify it, but there are a lot of complexities and a lot of variables depending on the category of manufacturer that you're dealing with. Certainly SAMs help indicate in a sewing line how quickly things move, and you can calculate those country by country to see efficiencies. But there are things within lines about how a sewer is correctly sewing with efficiency, because you can sew faster if that sewer can sew faster, but then all of a sudden you have a lot more failures or errors. Reworking those errors slow down a line, they increase cost. And can mess about with efficiency. Okay. So again, there's all these little variables that you look at in a line. If you're seeing a lot of rework going off, how a line is set up for rework, there will be errors in sewing, but how a factory sits down and identifies that can have big impacts on efficiency.
It almost seems like there needs to be some sort of big checklist that you go through.
There is a big checklist, really? Actually. Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think that, understanding your factory partner can be really important today, and understanding, how efficient, how well the factory is run has when today we have such little control over our shipping and logistics, and it is just nightmarishly long today. And air freight's super expensive. You've got to look at all these other components and then make some decisions on the parts you can.
Your transition to that shipping and logistics is perfect right now. As we talked about, there are just things that we can't control right now, especially in that segment. However, it's still a part of the equation. So what can be done in that side of manufacturing, the logistics side?
Again, depending on on category of product, we tend to really look east and west in the United States. We generally don't look often north and south. And so, there's manufacturing in Canada, depending on the level of product that you're doing. This whole nearshoring instead of onshoring, nearshoring is a whole conversation. So Central America, and South America, there's countries of manufacture that the lead times on boats are significantly less than we're seeing from China, for instance. We've mentioned that, China has really long lead times today. It's not because the boats are moving slower. It's because the system itself is bottled up. As it's difficult to get things on vessels. Once they get on vessels sit in, the ports waiting to clear, and they're outrageously long. If we look at Central America, boat lead times are 2 to 3 days, certainly shorter already than they are out of Asia or India, which can be 26, 28 days, just vessel lead times. But they're also going into ports that may have a more fluid dynamic than some of the main ports today. So the overall lead time could be, 10 to 14 days, let's say into Miami, where from Central America, where that can also have a major impact on your overall lead time.
And let's face it, even if you are in a very rushed situation, the 2 to 3 days shipping, that definitely improves the equation. But knowing that air is so expensive, at least if it's closer, in theory, it would be a little less expensive, right?
Yeah, anytime you air, you're understanding you're abdicating a considerable amount of profit. And cost can go up. And I think really trying to be a little more proactive today to all these other steps, helps companies stay profitable through this time and provide production because demand really hasn't subsided,
Well, in the end, it really is kind of important to understand, what are the key elements where value is perceived, what are the key priorities of the program, and understanding what fast turnaround time, what that really looks like today, what kind of quality you're wanting. All of these things are really fundamental in making decisions on where to go for production.
Yeah, we live in a big world. There's a lot of conversations. There's a lot understanding how to lay out the questions, understanding what you need particularly from all the aspects of production. Help someone that is educated on global manufacturing plug in and fill in the blanks and walk this production through efficiently.
One of the things that I hear you say so often is not every country does everything well.
Yeah, that's
and
correct.
So understanding maybe strengths country by country, I think would be a really great place to start. So maybe you can help me create a document that we can share as a part of a takeaway on this episode. Would you be up for that?
Certainly. I think that,
right.
That's always a fluid conversation.
Yeah.
Countries evolve in terms of their efficiencies, but we can do a document that kind of gives some general strengths and weaknesses by major countries of manufacture.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for giving us some insight on this very complex world of production. Until next time, make sure to subscribe to stay apprised of upcoming episodes of Clothing Culture.